Welcome to the podcast, Restore Yourself, Restore Your Marriage, where it's all about discovering the thoughts that get you in the mood, the thoughts that get you out of the mood, and how creating a deeper connection with yourself creates a deeper connection with your spouse. I'm your coach, Shelly Anderson, coaching you through life, love, and intimacy.
This is episode number 98, 3 Steps to Save Your Marriage. We are so excited to be able to share this episode with you today because we need some tips on how to save our marriages.
Can I just add something?
Yes.
Please like this video. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're listening to this on Apple, awesome. That's great. But if you are watching it on YouTube and you want to see us in person, or if you're not watching it on YouTube and you want to see us in person, tune into YouTube to our channel, Anderson Coaching. We are getting closer to launching our new program, and we're going to talk about that in our next episode. But I just wanted to kind of plug that because I think it's really important for us. And if you think marriage is important for people, and if you think that this is something that people can use to improve their marriage, then please share it with people. I guess that's all I want to say about that. But I think it's really important. And so 3 steps to save your marriage in this episode, and we're going to talk about these, and it's going to be pretty brief. And then our next podcast episode will be about our program that we're launching next week.
Yes, it's coming up so quickly, and we're super excited because you and I are both very strong advocates for marriage, and we want to help save marriages.
Who's not an advocate for marriage? I mean, seriously, you may be having a really hard time in your marriage, and you may be listening to this because you struggle just like everybody else. But so many of us just pretend like we have good marriages, but we know deep down that it could be way better.
That's right.
And if you really want your marriage to improve, that's great. Thank you for listening, and thank you for working on your marriage. But please share it. And we also want to hear what you think in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, please comment and let us know what you think.
Yes. So I wanted to start off with a short story of when we first moved here. I think, had only been here like a week or so. And, so we had all kinds of people at the house coming in, getting all of the utilities going, and we were meeting people left and right. It was just a madhouse, right? For the first few weeks. And I remember meeting one gal, and I think she saw some of our posters, or just as we were like setting up our office, she saw some things that really kind of intrigued her and piqued her interest. And she's like, wait a minute.
What do you guys do?
What do you guys do? What's going on? And so I was explaining to her that, we are life coaches and we focus on marriage and intimacy. And I told her we did a weekly podcast. And I remember her reaction because I had never heard it. And it just really caught me. She said, the world needs this. I have just heard of too many marriages getting stuck in the 4-year marriage trap. And I was like, the 4-year marriage trap, what is this? And she was just explaining, even from her experience and all the people she knew, that yes, the marriage was great and they went through the honeymoon phase. But it was like the 4-year mark kind of kicked in where a lot of the la land stuff wears off. Real life sets in where you're paying bills. Maybe you've had a kid or 2 by then. And all the foo-foo stuff has gone kind of to the wayside. And so she was just like, the 4-year marriage, man, we got to get past that.
I like the trap part of that because I believe that is a trap. And I actually, we've had lots of ups and downs, and I think we are pretty open about a lot of things in our marriage. We're not going to air our dirty laundry, every little bit of it, but I think we're pretty open about the fact that we do not have a perfect marriage.
Right.
but we love our marriage.
Yes.
And we love marriage in general because even though a lot of crap comes along with having a family and being married, because you really are committing and you're sacrificing certain things for something better. But that trap, I think, happens when you forget about the something better part.
Yeah.
The grass is always greener. You start worrying about money. You start worrying about supporting a family. Like, I'm speaking from a man's perspective, right? You start thinking about all the things that you wish you would have done differently. And that stuff can weigh you down. And this world is not geared toward keeping marriages strong. And we all know that. And anybody who thinks that the world is geared toward keeping marriages strong, I don't know what world you live in, but I want to visit. And
let's visit that world,
that fantasy land that you're in. But we're up against materialism and pride and fear.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And I have fear and I have materialism and pride and all those things. But we're going to talk today about 3 things to save your marriage, but also 3 things that kind of are fundamental to keeping your marriage strong. And if your marriage has fallen into that trap, these are 3 things that you can just start doing right now.
Yes.
To start improving it again. And it doesn't mean that these are the 3, answers that are going to solve all your problems, because there really isn't an answer to solve all your problems. But these are 3 things that will help you get back on track. And they might sound super simple. And, it's kind of like we want the solution that is, sexy and romantic and all that. And that's all part of it. But that's up to you to do. But the basic fundamentals might sound a little bit boring. And they might sound a little bit monotonous or, oh, it's just that. But if you put the time in and if you put the effort in, all of the magic can come back in.
That's right.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about that.
That's right. I love to think about these 3 steps as being magical, because when you put them into place, magic does happen. And so the first one is make your marriage a priority. Now, this might seem so obvious, but let's be real. Let's be real. A lot of times when I get a client and they're like, we talk about things that they value and their priorities, marriage is always going to be on the top.
Can I just say something right now?
What?
I'm one for clients.
You're my biggest client.
I really am. Can I just say, I know that when you talk about your clients, you're talking mostly about women that you've coached that have come to you needing help. And that's great. And there's a lot of things that we learn, but I just want to be really honest with you guys. I consider myself one of your clients, and you probably consider yourself one of my clients, but I have been so helped as a man, and there's not a lot, you don't have a lot of men clients.
No.
But here's the thing, it works for men too.
Yes.
And I think probably most of the people that listen to this are probably women. And I know that there are some men that listen to this podcast too. But I know that I have been helped by these principles even before I decided to do this with you. And it wasn't because you said, oh, Nick, you need to do this. And we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say that our conversations and you helping me with my priorities and thoughts and reminding me, the reminder is such a huge thing. And you may listen to this podcast and think, oh, well, they might be repetitive on certain things. Well, yeah, we're repetitive on the important things. And that's one of the things that has helped me so much, is just to remember that I need to do these things. And these 3 things that we're talking about, number 1, prioritizing your marriage, these are things that have helped me to not only to be a better husband to you, but also that have helped me find and keep that joy in our marriage. And hey, you know what? I'm weak and I need to be reminded of these things. And all of us do, whether you're a man or a woman, or you're a good husband or a crappy husband and you need to get better. We all need to get better.
Yes. So I find it fascinating because it sounds really nice, right? yes, let's have our marriage be a priority and we value marriage. Most of my clients, they value marriage. And in their mind, they think it's a priority. They almost make something they value synonymous with it being a priority. But when we say, hey, let's look at what you have done throughout this week. Where have you actually spent your time?
Well, I prioritize my marriage because I'm faithful to you. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we think. Like,
Yes.
look, I'm faithful to my wife, so I prioritize my marriage.
Right.
Okay, good for you. That's great. You're an adult that committed to a marriage and you prioritize your marriage. That's a great start.
Yes.
But there's more to it than that, right?
Yes. And so what we find is as we actually take a step back and be honest about how much time have I actually put in to my marriage this week, what we find is that number is often very low in comparison to all the stuff that we have to do, that we put on our to-do list, right? Like we may say, oh, I've spent, 3 hours at the grocery store this week. I spent total, 6 to 7 hours making food. I have to do that. I have to feed, make the food and feed my family and whatever. But then if we really say, well, how many hours, how many minutes have we spent on our marriage? That number is small.
Well, this is kind of embarrassing to say, but I probably spend more time thinking about ways that I wish you'd be a better wife.
Right. And this is what we do.
Yeah.
This is what humans naturally fall into, right? It's like we may think about aspects of our marriage, but it doesn't mean it's improving it. It doesn't mean it's making our marriage better. It doesn't mean it's fostering good emotions within ourselves. And it doesn't mean that we've actually spent time in a positive way to improve the marriage. So what we want to do as we make our marriage a priority is put marriage back at the top of our list.
You mean above my career and above making money? Because I make all the money for you.
Yes.
Right? Like
Right.
That's putting you first, isn't it?
Well, you could say that, right? But what we're talking about is not just some of the necessities. This is about creating that connection.
Creating your own connected couple.
Yes. So this means, yes, you're making some money. Yes, I'm doing some of these things. Yes, we're doing all of the things, right? But again, doing all the things can put marriage at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about when we say make marriage a priority is that you get at least 1 to 2 hours every single week of quality time together. Quality time.
So like date night.
Yes. And for us, this is a non-negotiable, right? It's like once we made the decision to go on dates every week, we rarely miss.
Well, here's the beauty of the date night for us. And this is a simple way to put your marriage first.
Yes.
Because the week is busy. We have 5 children, and a couple of those children are not easy. We've talked about that. And, we deal with some stuff with our kids just like you do. We all have different challenges.
Yeah.
But during the week, it's tough because at night, when we're done with all those responsibilities, we're tired. And sometimes we just want to go to sleep. But when we have date night every week, that gives us time alone to talk. And it's almost like that, catch-up meeting. How are we doing? Gives us time, even in the car driving. We can talk about things. We can talk about life. We can talk about how our kids are doing. And look, it can't just be date night. You got to spend other time doing that. But I think a minimum of 2 hours a week just talking about how are things. And look, we've had date nights where, it's kind of cold and we don't do a lot of talking.
Yeah, and that's okay.
But we're together and we're assessing where we're at because all of a sudden, for me, again, I'm talking a lot tonight, but I'm kind of on one today, I guess. But
yeah, you are.
I am on one, but I'm a little passionate about this because this is the thing that I can hold on to more than anything. Because when I feel like things are falling apart with our kids, or I just feel like the world is just in this kind of nasty place, when I have something to work on that's really, really important, then it helps me stay focused. And there's nothing more important to me than the state of my marriage. And that is a choice I've made, right? And all of us need to make that choice. What is important? Like, why work on it? Because if you don't feel that way, then there's no reason. You're not going to be motivated to even work on it at all. And when we have those date nights where it's a little cold and maybe we're not talking a lot and we're bugged by something, I at least can take inventory of the fact that I'm bugged.
Yeah.
And I know that something needs to go better. So even if I don't do it on the date night, because that's not the solver of all problems, I know that I need to spend some extra time doing something to improve that.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting around and saying, oh, I wish she would do this differently, or I wish she would show me more affection. Why is she being so cold? Or why is she mad at me for that stupid thing?
Right.
Well, again, back to the thought work. I know all of a sudden that I need to do some work. And so maybe I need to take some alone time and think or pray or get right with myself. And I know I need to do that if things aren't great between us.
Yeah.
And that's part of making your marriage a priority too, is making yourself a priority so you can be in the right place to make your marriage a priority.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because sometimes it's like when you decide to have a date night every week, you're not always in the mood, right?
Some are better than others.
Yeah, some dates are better than others. Sometimes your mood is better than others. And that's normal. That's to be expected. And it's totally okay. Like, I know that for me, sometimes when one day I'm just like, this is not the best. And then I remind myself, like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's normal. It's normal
okay.
that some dates are going to be better than others. And it gives you that almost like a self-check. So then I'm like, this is going to be one of those dates. I know I'm going to go home and I'm going to do some thought work. And, the next date is going to be better. So it is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And it is a commitment. You commit to yourself first. And then to your spouse.
I think that is such a good point. But let me just say, when we have those date nights where I take inventory that things aren't quite right, sometimes before we even get home, I know that there's something that I need to change or apologize for. And by the time we get home, by the time I've had some time to think about it, maybe that night that's when I approach you and just say, I'm sorry. We need to get things back. And if you're not doing date night every single week, you don't even have that standard of what right looks like. Right? So even though some dates are worse than others, you got to be together enough to know what being in the right place with each other feels like.
Yeah.
Because then you know when it's off.
That's such a good point.
So date night isn't the end all be all. There's other things that you can do. But I mean, let's close up this point.
Yeah.
Make your marriage a priority, however that works for you. But you've got to have time together without all the chaos that goes along with being married and having a family, or being busy and, maybe have a lot of responsibility at work and, or at church. Like, there's a lot of people who have responsibility at church. And you're like, I never see my husband or I never see my wife because they're always off doing service and they're doing something good, but it's easy to get bugged by even good things that they're doing because you're not together all the time.
Yeah.
And you've just got to take that time.
Yeah. And I think what we have found is that once we look at the week and we're like, okay, when are we going to go? We just kind of decide ahead of time and say, okay, this week it might be on a Thursday night at 9, and maybe we're just going to go grab a dessert, and then come back and eat it together and just spend that time or whatever. But it's like, once you kind of decide ahead of time what day, what time you're going to do it, you kind of commit. You can talk to your kids about it. This is one of my favorite things. I tell the kids, hey, this is mom and dad's date night at this time. And they become so supportive.
Yeah.
They want our marriage to be good. And I love it. It sets a good example for them. It shows that we keep our marriage a priority. And we're modeling that example for what they can do when they get married as well.
Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay, number 2, seek to improve yourself each week in one small way. Now, this kind of goes back to what even you were saying, like on date nights, you can kind of have this self-check. But what I like also to think about is that you have your own goal for self-improvement, self-development in a way that would contribute to your marriage.
And individual joy.
Yes.
Because if I'm not individually like happy as, with myself and the way I'm living my life, how can I give all of myself to you?
It's much more challenging to do that.
It's impossible.
So I think some really good options in this way is listen to some podcasts. That's one of the values of this podcast, is that if you dedicate and commit to yourself that you will listen to this podcast every week, you are going through that process of trying to improve. And when you're improving yourself, those results and the effects are going to have an influence on your spouse and in that relationship.
One of the things I love about reading or listening to educational things is that it might not even necessarily be the substance of what I'm reading or listening to in that moment. But by doing that, it might spark a thought of something that I know I need to do. And it's like inspiration, right?
Yes.
You receive inspiration. You receive promptings of things that you need to do differently. So it doesn't mean you're just like gathering all this information and gobbling it all up and learning as much as you can. It's by doing that, you're also going to be receiving your own promptings, your own senses of what you need to do. And the key is to act on those.
Yeah, I love that. And so I think one of the reasons podcasts are so popular and continue to be on the rise is because you can multitask during podcasts.
And you can speed it up.
Yes. And so, I remember when we first started this podcast and some of my friends were like, oh my gosh, Shelly, I never got so much laundry done. It was so beneficial to be like listening and contemplating and applying these things while you're getting something else done. It's a beautiful, beautiful concept. And so that's something we can all take advantage of. If we want to improve even our health physically, we want to drop a couple pounds, we can combine these things, right? Listen to something that helps you grow and improve while you're working out, while you're taking a walk. It's wonderful to pair those things up. It's very powerful.
Yeah, I agree. And again, just if you're a spiritual person, praying, reading your scriptures, those things are really important too. And I am a big fan of doing those things. But if you're not taking some time to meditate and to listen to God or the universe or whatever you believe in speak to you, then if you can't liken what you listen to your own life and use that to open your mind and open your heart, then you're missing a big part of it. So I just want to make that point again, because I know for myself, like I like to gobble up information, but if I don't listen to that and then turn it off and just let my mind maybe wander a little bit and meditate a little bit and think about how that affects me and what I need to do about that thing that I just listened to, then it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
For me, it is.
Yeah.
So it might be for you too.
Good point. Okay, let's move on to number 3.
Okay.
Number 3 is to increase your thought awareness and challenge the thoughts that aren't serving your marriage.
You mean when I think, my bitch wife.
Yes.
I should stop thinking that.
That is a thought you should challenge. Challenge that thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is true. This is human nature. We are all going to go to negative thoughts. It's so easy to do. We're going to go to blaming thoughts. We're going to go to all or nothing thoughts, very rigid thinking, right? We're going to be like, why can't my husband just do this thing? Like, why can't he change?
We've had podcast title. We had a title called Pack Your Shit Up.
Yes.
And that was all about oh, she should do this, she should do that. And again, it comes down to like expectations that we have of each other. And I think even if it's not a negative thing, if you just if you have expectations and you kind of get let down a lot, you might be okay with that for a while, but eventually that's going to wear on you.
Yes.
And you can't control that other person. They have their own agency, and you can share what you think. Like, hey, you know, it would make me feel really good if this or that. And there's a lot of other episodes where we've talked about this, but that's a huge thing too, because I don't really think, you know, really negative thoughts a lot, but they creep in.
Oh yeah.
And, I even shared about, one of my strategies was to start calling certain things, like while I'm serving you, like, oh, I moved your bitch clothes over, and like, it was kind of funny and it broke the ice. And that's me. Look, I may be a little crude for some of you, but you have thoughts that you're ashamed of. We all do.
Yes, we all have ugly, messy thoughts.
And your spouse has thoughts that they're ashamed of, and they're ugly and messy. And this is just something that we need to consider. And we have made it our career at this point to help people to know that they are already empowered to control their own thinking.
Yes.
And this is a fact. You can choose the thoughts that you have, even if it's really difficult to do. But it's thought awareness.
Yes.
And if you can start mastering your thought awareness, it will change your life. And I testify of that, because it has changed my life by knowing that I can change my thoughts. Because before I knew that, my thoughts would just take me down dark paths and I would be miserable. But as I remember that I can change the thoughts that I'm having and start thinking and choose to think better, more positive, more productive thoughts, I have been absolutely happier than I was, and also more in love.
Yeah, that's true. It's such a powerful tool. And I know that as people are, start learning about life coaching, and sometimes people can get really caught up in like, oh, choose joy. And they're like, that's not easy to do. I can't just choose joy. And it's true. Like sometimes you can't just say, well, I'm going through this hard thing and I just want to choose joy. No, you have to choose your thoughts.
Yeah.
You have to choose your thoughts. And so a really good way for you to recognize if perhaps you need to do this is just do a check-in with your emotions. So if you find that maybe at 1:00, on Wednesday, you have some strong negative emotions going on, and maybe it's towards your spouse. Maybe you realize, like, I asked him to do this thing, he hasn't done it. I see here as the reminder of it, and you just feel really negative. Whenever you have some strong negative emotions, this is like, oh, there it is. This is my opportunity to find out which thought just triggered that negative emotion.
So do that.
Do it. Challenge all of your thoughts.
Yeah.
Challenge all of them.
That's the third tip.
That is the third tip. Challenge all of your thoughts. Challenge all of the thoughts that aren't serving your marriage in a beneficial way. Challenge all your thoughts and leave nothing. I love this concept because what the natural human brain wants to do is just escape things. Go through that process. We encourage you to do it.
Yeah.
I would much rather have everyone go through that process and say, I can challenge everything without running away from everything.
Yeah.
Don't think that escaping is the only option or that it's the only result if you challenge your thinking. It's not.
Look, escaping from your thoughts, you might as well just do drugs. Because that's the same thing.
Right.
Right? Because the problems aren't going to go away. I mean, you might as well just go get hammered.
Well, yeah.
I'm not saying you should do that.
Right.
But that's what people do, that to escape.
Yes.
And running from your thoughts and your feelings and all that, or else just giving up and not dealing with it. It's the same thing. You're escaping.
Yeah.
And so people can get addicted to that, and they can get in the habit of that. And that is probably just as damaging as other bad habits.
That's right. So that is a good opportunity for you to look inward and say, this is my chance to really challenge my thoughts, challenge my thinking, and exchange your thoughts. If you don't like the ones that you're having and they are really triggering negative emotions, this is where your power is. Exchange that thought for one that serves you better.
You can do it.
That's right. Now, ask yourself, do these thoughts serve my marriage? That's a question you can ask yourself. And if they don't, please go through that process of exchanging that negative thought out for a more beneficial and positive one.
And the last thing I'll add is another question that you should ask yourself. And I've said this over and over again in this podcast, but this has been so helpful for me. How am I a problem for my spouse?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we forget that it takes, again, back to my stupid cliche, but I love this one. It takes two to tango. Our hands are never completely clean. And so asking that question, how am I a problem in this situation? You're going to have thoughts and you're going to have promptings. And you're going to have inspiration. You're going to know. You don't even have to ask your spouse.
Right.
You're going to know how you're contributing. So that's all I have to say.
Yes. Well, we hope that you will be able to remember these 3 steps to make your marriage a priority, to seek to improve yourself each week in one small way, and to challenge your thinking.
Amen.
Amen. So we hope you'll be able to apply these 3 steps throughout this week to improve your marriage. Because remember, the more you restore this type of intimacy with yourself, the more you restore it with your spouse. Thank you so much for listening today, and we hope you will join us again next week.